It all started with Tracy Dale Terrell when he outlined a proposal for a new philosophy of language teaching. He named it the natural approach. Terrell was a teacher of Spanish in California when he made his first attempt to develop an approach that incorporated the naturalistic principles researchers had previously identified in SLA. Between 1977 and 1982, the natural approach was conceived. Tracy Terrell then decided to join forces with Stephen Krashen, an applied linguist, to elaborate a theoretical rationale. Krashen's and Terrell's combined statements appeared on their book The Natural Approach, published in 1983. Their book contains theoretical sections prepared by Krashen that outline his views on second language acquisition and sections on implementation and classroom procedures. Theory of language. Krashen and Terrell see communication as a primary function of language. They even refer to the natural approach as an example of a communicative approach, and said that is similar to other communicative approaches being developed today. Their approach, basically, focuses on teaching communicative abilities. The natural approach is similar to other communicative approaches being developed today. The natural approach assumes a linguistic hierarchy of structural complexity that one masters through different encounters with input contained structures at the I+1 level. And so, the students will jump over some obstacles, let's say, that will have a certain difficulty that they haven't experienced before. And what does I+1 mean? Well, Krashen refers to that input that contains structures slightly above the learner's present level.
The theory of learning. Language acquisition does not require extensive use of conscious grammatical rules and does not require tedious drills. These are Krashen's theories of second language acquisition and his 5 hypotheses. The acquisition learning hypothesis. This one claims that there are 2 distinctive ways of developing competence in a second or foreign language: the acquisition, which is the natural way, and the learning, which cannot lead to acquisition. The monitor hypothesis. In this hypothesis, conscious learning operates only as a monitor or editor that checks or repairs the output of what has been acquired. The natural order. This one says that grammatical structures are acquired in a predictable order, and it does little good to try to learn them in another order. The input hypothesis. This hypothesis claims that people acquire language best from messages and relationships that are just slightly beyond their current competence.
Will speak fluently after it has built up enough linguistic competence by understanding input.
The affective filter hypothesis says that the learner's emotional state can act as a filter that impedes or blocks input necessary for language acquisition. It divides in motivation, self-confidence, and anxiety.
This is really important since it can stop, block, or encourage that input necessary to acquisition. Objectives. The natural approach is for beginners and is designed to help them become intermediates. It has the expectation that students will be able to function adequately in the target situation. They will understand the speaker of the target language and will be able to convey their requests and ideas.
The syllabus is divided into 2 points of view. The first holds a list for some typical goals for language course. The first point is basic personal communication skills in oral, for example, listening to an announcement in public places. Second, basic personal skills written, for example, reading and writing personal letters. The third changes to academic learning skills in oral, for example, listening to a lecture, and fourth and last, academic skills written, for example, taking notes in class. With this, we can know that natural approach is primarily designed to develop basic communication skills, both oral and written. Now, the second point of view holds that the purpose of the language course will vary according to the needs of the students and their particular interest, as Krashen and Terrell said. In the types of learning and teaching activities, we have that from the beginning of our class thought according to the natural approach. Emphasis is on presenting comprehensible input in the target language. To minimize stress, learners are not required to say anything until they feel free and ready, but they are expected to respond to a teacher command and questions in other ways. Now, acquisition activities are implemented, but what are those? Well, those are the ones that focus on meaningful communication rather than language form. What characterizes natural approach learning and teaching activities is the use of familiar techniques within the framework of a method that focuses on providing comprehensible input and a class environment that provides comprehension on input, minimizes learning anxiety, and maximizes learning self-confidence. In learner roles, we have the learners have 4 kinds of responsibility in the natural approach classroom. The first of them is to provide information about their specific goals so that the acquisition activities can focus on the topics and situations more relevant to their needs. The second responsibility is to take an active role in ensuring comprehensible input. They should learn and use conversational management techniques to regulate input. For example, not only reading, maybe make a conversation with their peers so they can practice instead of only reading. In the third place, they have to decide when to start producing speech and when to upgrade it. As we said, we cannot obligate them. They need to feel ready so they can start using it. And last but never least, where learning exercises, for example, grammar study, are to be part of the program to decide with the teacher the relative amount of time to be devoted to them and perhaps even complete and correct them independently.
The teacher roles. The natural approach teacher has 3 central roles, 3 specific roles. First, the teacher is the primary source of comprehensible input into target language, and the teacher is the primary generator of that input. The teacher is required to generate a constant flow of language input while providing a multiplicity of non-linguistic clues to assist students in interpreting that now on specific input. In the second one, we have the natural approach teacher creates a classroom atmosphere that is interesting, friendly, and in which there is a low affective filter for learning. This is achieved in part through such natural approach techniques as not demanding speech from the students before they are ready for it, not correcting students' error, and providing subject matter of high interest to the students. It's like the safe zone of some students actually. And finally, we have that the natural approach teacher has a particular responsibility in communicative clarity and complexity in many cases.
The role of instructional materials. The primary goal of the materials in the natural approach is to make classroom activities as meaningful as possible, and by making use of realia, pictures, and visual materials. Pictures and other visual materials and aids are essential because they supply the content for communication. The primary aim of materials is to promote comprehension and communication. They facilitate the acquisition of a large vocabulary within the classroom. Other recommended materials include schedules, brochures, advertisements, maps, and books at levels appropriate to the students. Games in general are seen as useful classroom materials.
Crash and Antero provide suggestions for the use of wide range activities, all of which are familiar competence of situational language activities, communicative language activities, and other methods discussed.
The natural approach belongs to a tradition of language teaching methods based on observation and interpretation of how learners acquire both first and second language in non-formal settings. In the natural approach, a focus on comprehension and meaningful communication, as well as the provision of right kinds of comprehensible input, provide the necessary and sufficient conditions of successful classroom second and foreign language acquisition. The natural approach largely irrelevant to the needs of teachers in public schools. As with the public education in many other countries, teachers are now required to teach the standards that specify the language skill needs